It's something that Muslims who are really trying to show off the fact that they really pray hard. They pray physically hard to the point where they put their heads into the carpet and they grow an actual scar.
Because we always try to have fun with these things and remember that we're fighting for the right and for good, for truth, for justice, for the American way. And so we had a big check like the Publishers Clearinghouse for $12,000 that we presented to Bosch, and a real one as well.
And I drew him the sword. I said, wait a minute, how about if I have him threatening me to say I can't draw him, and me simply saying, well, that's why I draw you. That's the only reason why I draw Muhammad. Because he says I can't, because Islam says I can't, because Muslims say I can't. Again, as I put it often, I never set out to draw Muhammad until we were told that we quote unquote can't.
And now, of course, in light of what happened, could the selection have been any more prescient and perfect?
For my own security reasons, I had to leave with my own security detail, and I believe we were in the car, and then we saw on Twitter and later on the radio that in the place that I just left a few minutes ago, something happened.
Automatic weapons opened fire outside the Curtis Culwell Center. The suspects are dead and a police officer has been hurt. There are concerns that the gun...
The event was over. I was approached by a media outlet. I don't recall which one it was.
A Breitbart news reporter approached Pamela and me and asked us for an interview. And she was going first. I was standing right next to her and waiting to be interviewed. The crowd was milling around and getting ready to leave the thing that just ended. And then one of our security team hurried into the room, ran into the room, and told us that there'd been a shooting outside.
And the next thing I know, I'm being carried off like a pocketbook by a SWAT team member. I was told that a cop had been shot, and you'll notice they did this with Manchester too. When the event was over, right after 7 p.m., is when the two jihadists, Sufi and Ibrahim Simpson, stormed the Culwell Center. And the thinking behind that is, here all these people are gathered in a very large room, and then they have to funnel out through a foyer, just like the Manchester jihadi set himself off as they were pouring out after her last song, after Ariana Grande's last song. He tried to shoot the people as they were emerging into this foyer and out the door.
It was a terroristic attack. Two people attacked a police officer and were shot, and that the people were gathered and were not allowed to leave inside the venue. And of course everybody was shocked. And I remember my own detail, and they had all with their ears and they thought, what should we do, where should we go, or what should happen. It was total chaos.
And if those guys were out there, a few other people walking out at the same time, maybe 20, 30, 40, who knows, would have taken us all out. And fortunately, the guy did what he did. It's a heroic cop. I wanted to draw a cartoon, get his name, but they have not released his name, which is good. Good for them. Good for him. Protect himself. But I always wanted to draw something in his honor because he saved a lot of people.
All of the people were brought downstairs to the basement, where, from what I understand, because we were separate from them, and I'm sorry we were, because I would have liked to have seen it, they broke out in the Star Spangled Banner and other patriotic songs, which I just thought was such a great American response.
Islam to shut us up and have a cartoon contest exactly at the place where they decided not to want Muhammad cartoons. Again, it was about freedom of speech, because they tried to kill not only us but freedom of speech, and it was a very strange moment indeed.
One of the things the left does, whether it's in Hollywood or in the media, entertainment industries, you name it, academia in particular, is public shaming, and this has been one of the tactics of the left to try to embarrass and isolate people who express opinions.
The furious reaction from the mainstream media and from putative conservatives like Donald Trump and Bill O'Reilly and Laura Ingraham in condemning Pamela after the event indicates that they not understand what was going on.
To talk about blaming the victim, attacking the victim, she was attacked as the originator of this massacre. They said her event left 2 dead. Her event left 2 dead. As if it was just some innocent 2 victims who died. Those 2 were out to murder 200. They got what they deserved.
So you learn nothing from Charlie Hebdo. I mean, it was striking.
You want her to die.
You know what? She should be put before Sharia court and tried, and if
She's
found
not a
guilty, of
Muslim.
course she would face capital punishment.
She's not a Muslim, Anjum. She's not a
doesn't make any
Muslim. She
difference.
doesn't
She
believe
should
what you
have thought of that
believe.
before
You
she
don't
had this
believe in
competition.
liberty and freedom and
You
freedom
need
of
to learn the
speech. You want
lessons
to
from
oppress her over
Theo
a
Van Gogh
cartoon.
and Salman Rushdie and Hirsi Ali. You cannot continue to go down this road and expect the Muslims to stand back.
The point is not to mock Muslims or Islam. The point was to show in the face of violent intimidation that we will not bow and submit to the assassin's veto. The fact is, in that fatwa that was issued against me, my name is preceded by Khanzir. Now, Khanzir means pig. It's the word Muhammad used before he slaughtered beheaded hundreds of Jews. So to first say to the liberal media that this is not religious is absurd and obscene on its face. To blame me and say that my cartoons are controversial, excuse me, murdering cartoonists is controversial. And it is the jihadis that made this a flashpoint, not me. And does anyone really think that these jihadis would have just been peaceful, loving Americans?
Okay, can I come back to that?
Of course they wouldn't. I submit to you that our conference saved... no, I'm talking, sorry. I know you're used to stepping over women, but you're not going to have it here, okay? My conference saved lives because I understand the threat, and we had enormous protection, and the Garland police were superb. But those jihadists drove 1,000 miles for this conference. Would they have hit a mall? Would they have hit a coffee shop like in Australia?
Or kids.
We must not deny Muslims that responsibility, that you are responsible for your actions and for your thoughts. And if you choose to kill people because they've made a drawing, then it's the responsibility of the murderer or the person who attempts to kill. And it's that person and his ideology that should be condemned. Not the cartoonist or the author or the artist.
We all understand that there's a right to offend. They don't like the Christ on the cross in a jar of urine or the elephant dung. We didn't like it. We didn't kill anybody. There's Holocaust denial cartoon conferences. The Jews didn't kill anybody. What is this the low expectation of soft bigotry? Why don't we expect that from the Muslim world?
In that sense, it's almost condescending that we would expect less.
They know what they're doing is censorious. They know what they're doing is cowardly. They know they wouldn't do it for any other religion because no one else threatens them. So by saying, aha, you had that coming, you asked for that, that's actually their way of saying, look how smart I am, I'm legitimate, my decision was not cowardly or moral, it was smart, and you, thank goodness you were attacked because it proves how smart I was. There's something terrible going on in the Western media.
That what you did, you knew would be very provocative. Your keynote speaker is an outspoken and provocative person who is obviously an Islamophobe.
That is a clever strategy. It's a way of framing legitimate concerns about, say, Muslim immigration or Muslim assimilation and framing it into the language of bigotry as a form of mental illness, which is what these phobias are meant to indicate. If you can be hit by a car and tossed off Westminster Bridge to die in the Thames, if you can have a truck rammed through the main department store in Stockholm and die, if you can be at Mass in a French church and have someone walk in and slit your throat, if you can be a commuter on the Brussels metro and have a guy self-detonate and rip your legs off, it is not unreasonable to have a fear phobia of Islam, Islamophobia.
Look at sociology. There's this term called preference falsification, which basically describes what happens when you ask a woman if she's a feminist, and she will sort of look around nervously and say, well, yes, of course. Because it's the socially accepted thing to do, because all the social pressures are in that direction. Well, we saw what happened for the Berlin Wall, for the Soviet Union, when everybody's sort of pretending to stand in one direction. Everyone is sort of signing up to the feminist thing, signing up to, you know, the right opinion about stuff, because they're so terrified of stepping out of line, because the left has bullied everybody into saying they agree, even if they don't.
Who would decide what's good and what's forbidden? The jihadists?
But here's the thing.
I didn't make the cartoons of Flashpoint.
I understand that.
The jihadists
Well,
made it a
that's
Flashpoint.
debatable.
You
That's
are
debatable.
kowtowing. You are submitting. I will not submit. Submission is slavery. I will not live as a slave. That is what you
I
are asking
understand
me
that.
to do.
No.
Yes.
It's about understanding the price of what you do.
How can you criticize Islam without being Islamophobic? How can you point out the homophobia of Islam without being an Islamophobe? It's the same problem that Jews have in this one. How the left wing, in particular, the Jews, but others too. How can I point out Muslim anti-Semitism without being an Islamophobe? You can't. You can't. Get over it. Not possible. If you fall into this idea, then you'll get the name, you'll get the smear. But as I say, some of us like to fall back on what we used to call facts.
All over Europe, politicians and the media are complicit in covering up changes that are happening to our civilization.
The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, the state broadcaster of Canada, has a style guide that says do not use the word terrorist. It's too loaded. It's too one-sided. Only use it if you're quoting someone else saying it. Otherwise, say militant or extremist or something. I mean, it's just, these people aren't even hiding the fact that they are full out on the other side of the debate.
It is now a conscious dishonesty.
In Britain, we have an outfit called the National Union of Journalists, and they have very strict guidelines on on how they report on stories relating to religion or race. And they say, go out of your way to play down any mention of race and religion when the perpetrator is an ethnic minority or a Muslim.
At the police level, at the social worker level, at the political level, and at the media level, it becomes easier to look away. And in fact, it becomes career-threatening not to look away.
Everyone sees it. Everybody sees the Markazi Masjid at the bottom of the road. Everybody sees these masjid boys going in there and learning, horrifically literalist interpretations, fundamentalist interpretations of the Quran, right? Focusing on the paragraphs that are mean and violent and awful towards the unbelievers, the kuffar, the Jews, the Christians, what they call the apes and the pigs of the world. Everybody sees it. When you live in a place of 4,500 people, and in the 2011 census, 44 of those people were non-Muslims, who's going to say something? And that was 2011. In 2017, 2018, those 44 people have gone, by the way, already. So it's 100% now. Who's going to say something? You're going to rat your own brother out? You're going to rat your cousin out? And then what's going to happen to you?
I agree. A cruel joke. Because if you see something and say something and nothing happens, you're a racist, Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigot. But the people in San Bernardino saw all kinds of strange activity in the middle of the night, people going in and out, all this contraband to make bombs. They didn't want to say anything. They were afraid that they would be called Islamophobic. And I will tell you that even if they said something, I don't think anything would have been done. I think law enforcement would have said, oh, those people are Islamophobes.
We had a Home Secretary called Jack Straw who lived in, his constituency was Blackburn, and his constituency was utterly dependent on the Muslim vote. So, of course, they bent over backwards to accommodate Islam.
It's an obvious temptation for politicians, and it's an obvious temptation particularly to play the sort of sectarian card, because if, for instance, you were running in a very predominantly Muslim constituency, you might well say that you'd like to outlaw, criminalize, novelists or cartoonists.
Even to the point of knowing that massive Muslim electoral fraud through postal voting was going on. And they never investigated this at all because it would upset the local community and they might no longer vote Labour.
So it's a combination of the more you import it, the more you are dependent on it, also politically, and being very weak and politically correct and being afraid to tell the truth.
Well, you see it happening in the Democratic Party in the United States too, by the way. When you look at the DNC convention ahead of your general presidential election, you saw Palestinian flags flying in the audience, but you didn't see any American flags on that stage when Hillary Clinton was due to give her acceptance speech of the nomination. It took an outcry from people to actually get American flags put on stage at the DNC. These two parties, very similar in their worldviews, are both going down the same road. That is a road where you have a dependency on a certain people. You have areas in the United Kingdom where the entire councils, where entire council wards are controlled by strict and devout Muslims. Are they British citizens? Yes. But apart from that, there's scantly anything British about them. They take control of these areas, they take control of these wards, they take control of these councils, and they start infecting it with things like anti-Semitism. They start infecting it with a bizarre sort of Pakistani, Bangladeshi style corrupt politics.
Look here in Rotterdam, last time the second biggest city of the Netherlands, not so long ago in the last municipality elections, it was the Muslim vote who made the Social Democrats, the Labour Party in the Netherlands, the winner and the biggest in the elections in Rotterdam. So it became also a political force where people can vote and have an enormous influence. And this is what you see happening everywhere.
I did a tour of the Malmo suburbs, the Rinkeby suburbs, London suburbs, Yorkshire suburbs, Béziers in the south of France, the Parisian suburbs. I went to Hamtramck, I went to Dearborn, I went to some other places around the United States, Brooklyn, for instance. A lot of these places are starting to show the first signs. I mean, in Europe, they're showing all the signs, but in the United States, places are starting to show the first signs of what I call no-go zones or no-go areas. And that is not to say that you and I could not walk through there, but it might be that the postal service won't deliver there. It might be that police have to go in huge numbers there. It might be that girls in short skirts or hot pants can't go there without feeling that they might get attacked or raped or groped.
In Sweden, police are now forbidden from giving the ethnicity and religion of assailants in sexual assault cases. So there are no rape statistics in Sweden now that identify who is doing it.
All the women I've spoken to in Scandinavia and in Germany, in the Netherlands, there's a consistent aspect. They feel doubly violated. First, they feel violated by the guys who sexually assaulted them. Then they feel violated a second time by the fact that the media and the police and the politicians and sometimes even their own friends and co-workers regard them as the problem, because they're saying something that does not fit the official lie.
The interesting thing about the war on free speech is that a lot of people think of it and think of free speech as something that, I don't know, writers do, you know, those of us who publish books and write pieces in the papers and so on. We're the ones who do free speech. And that's a fundamental misunderstanding, and one that I think a lot of people are involved in, because actually, I mean, free speech is something everybody does, or everybody should do, should certainly be able to do. And a very good example of what happens when the war against free speech really hits is that people who've never thought of writing or venting their opinion anywhere, never thought of writing a magical realist novel, never thought of drawing a cartoon about Muhammad, just in their work lives come across something and they should say something, and yet don't.
In Rotherham, in the UK, for 10 years, the authorities turned a blind eye to Pakistani rape gangs. 1,400 girls were raped because the authorities didn't want to seem racist or Islamophobic.
Rotherham is an undistinguished northern English town that actually has fallen into a pit of child sex slavery where that is accepted as a feature of life.
Muslim men abusing white girls because they were white and non-Muslim, almost entirely underage. I mean, abuse of the most horrific kind, repeated gang rapes, unbelievable.
This has been going on for well over a decade. I did an exclusive interview with one of the survivors, one of the victims. Those girls went to the police numerous times. It's not a question of nobody said anything. The victims themselves went to the authorities. They were ignored. I mean, these are not girls from, the House of Windsor. These are girls from broken homes, understood. But so what? Is any life worth less than any other life?
And the striking thing about this is the silence that you heard from social workers, the silence of the police, silence of the Crown Prosecution Service, silence basically of every single one of the people who stood between these girls and their abusers, or should have stood between these girls and their abusers. All of these people were silent.
It's the balance you have. You have the multicultural, the respect for multiculture towards freedom of speech. And then you have white men's guilt, the colonialism, and the Western world, and it's suppressing other cultures. And now is the time for payback.
I spoke to several girls who were kind of 13, 14 when they were just lured into this thing. One of them, a young lady called Jessica, told me she was 14. The police kick open the door of they get a report. They kick open the door of the bedroom. They find her rapist in bed with her. He's a Muslim man. She dives under the bed. She's naked under the bed. They pull her out from under the bed. They happen to find her with like a little wooden truncheon there. And so they charge her with having an illegal weapon. She has like a, I guess a billy club or thing that she kept under the bed. Meanwhile, her rapist, they let go.
And why were they silent? The official government investigation into the Rotherham and Mews scandal showed that they were silent because they were afraid of saying what was happening, because of the religious and racial identity of the perpetrators, and because of the religious and racial identity of their victims. This idea that free speech is writers and artists and cartoonists pouring unnecessary petrol and gasoline onto a fire is not true when it's about writers and artists and cartoonists. And it's also not true when it comes down to anybody and everybody in the country, because anybody and everybody in the country can be made to feel that if they say what is happening in front of their eyes, they are also pouring gasoline onto the fire. And they're not. These were the only people, the social workers, the council workers and the police, who were silent whilst hundreds and hundreds of girls were ritually abused by gangs. Those people were not fire starters. They were not kerosene match fanatics.